Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Shallow End. My name is Dave Schwartz. On Instagram, I'm I with Dave Sports Cards, and today I'm going to talk about how I thought about bidding on my own card. I will explain fully, and I'm going to skip to the end in that I did not, but I wanted to explain the situation, and I think this is a good conversation to have because it is not something that I ever thought about doing, but then a situation arose where I started thinking, am I going to have to do this? Am I going to have to bid on my own card and risk all that comes with it, from my reputation to everything else I have tried to build as part of this hobby? Okay. So before we get to the meat of this conversation, let me back up several months ago now. So several months ago, I was on ComC. And as I'm on ComC, I am looking for um, sort of replica vintage cards of Albert Pujols. So like Gaudi cards that were made in the 2000s of Pujols, they cost like $1 a piece, 50 cents a piece, maybe $2 a piece. Gaudi cards, play ball cards, US Carmel cards, all these replicas, which were really, really popular in the 2000s. And so they would reprint a card of like Rogers Hornsby, but they would also put in modern players like Miguel Cabrera or Pujols or Ichiro or somebody of that era. And again, these were just cheap little inserts that were put in there. Very, very, very little value. So I'm on ComC and I'm looking at one, and I come across a 2003 Upper Deck play ball Albert Pujols. Uh, I was just there, maybe 4 or 5 copies on ComC, and my only goal for my binder was to pick out one that looked nice. So I wanted good coloring, and I wanted decent centering, good registration. It wasn't that hard. They were all mostly fine. And so I picked one out and I put it in my order. And I think it was a few weeks later where I finally requested that my order be shipped, and it got shipped. And it finally arrives, about a week, 10 days later, whenever that is. And I'm staying up late that night. My wife was out of town. And so the order was there, and I'm just kind of watching TV, and I'm like, okay, let's see what's in my ComC order. And I'm going through it, and it's like, oh yeah, this card. That's one of my favorite things about ComC, is that sometimes I forget what's in the order. So when it finally arrives, it's like Christmas. Ooh, Christmas. Ooh, Christmas again. And then I come across the Pujols card, the 2003 Upper Deck Play Ball Albert Pujols. I look at it, I'm like, oh, okay, great. I'm glad I got this one. And wait a minute, what is this? And I stop, and there's something on the card that I didn't notice on the ComC screen. And I look at it, and I'll show you what it is. So here's the card. I'm going to first, let me say, for those who are listening to this podcast, there was a mark on the card that indicates it is a 1 of 1. Okay, it is a 1 of 1. And if you go to one of my favorite websites, which is Baseballpedia, and the people who work at Baseballpedia are faceless, anonymous heroes for giving us these checklists for cards that go back decades, and I really, really appreciate it. And it seems that it's a 1 of 1. So I go to Baseball Cardpedia, and what I'm doing right now for those who are listening is I am sharing a screen grab of Baseball Cardpedia's page for the 2003 Upper Deck Play Ball cards. And according to them, there is one of 1. It is called an original artwork redemption. And these original artwork redemptions look just like the cards that got printed, but they were the cards from which the cards got printed. They were the inspiration for it. And so 90 cards from the set had original artwork redemptions. And 1 of 1s, and it said it right on there. And if you're watching this, I can see my cursor now. I'm highlighting or circling over where it says the 1 of 1. From there, I jump over to PSA to see if any of these have ever sold in the past, or Card Ladder to see if any of these have sold in the past. And they are very rarely do, but they do exist. They're an actual thing. So sometime in the mid 2000s, a Lance Berkman one sold for about $300. A Jimmy Fox one sold for about $300. Sometime in the 20 teens, a Sammy Sosa one sold for around, I think, around 160 or 170, whatever the cost was. So these were real things. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, for those watching, I'm going to share this card. Here's the card. It's, play ball replica. Pujols is wearing a red zip up Cardinal jacket with the iconic white STL over the left breast. He's wearing a blue hat with a red bill, and on the blue hat is a single Cardinal sitting on a bat. He's got his goatee. There's a beautiful shadow in the background, clouds and sky in the background, beautiful artwork. And then as you look down across his chest, you see something that says 2003. And then in the middle of it is USA. And then it says 1 of 1. So it's like 2003 USA 1 of 1. And it's all in gold. And if you're looking on eBay, I think you might be able to find one now of JD Drew. I think he's got one on there as well. So this is a card that never appeared in PSA's pop count or SGCs or BGS. So I'm assuming that even ComC mislabeled it. It was just listed under just sort of the basic cards of this set for Pujols. And it was hard to see. You really couldn't see it in the original photo either of the cards that I selected from. I literally just lucked into this Albert Pujols 1 of 1, which appears to be genuine. Now, the next card, or the next question that one might ask would be, what do you think it's worth? And I had no idea. My best guess was anywhere between $40 and $500. I don't know. And the reason I say so low, $40, is because this is not a very desirable set. It's not even a card that anybody is really generally even aware of. The reason I say maybe up to $500 is because 20 years ago, Lance Berkman and Jimmy Fox sold for in the 300s. And about 10 years ago, a Sosa sold for about 175. Plus, this is Albert Pujols. He is, of the modern players, the best out of those players. Other than him and Ichiro, there was not a better player in this set to find the 1 of 1. Maybe there's a Pujols collector out there. By the way, I should let you know that I paid 61 cents for this card. I paid 61 cents for this 1 of 1 Albert Pujols from ComC. So in April, I was down in St. Louis to visit my dad, and there was a nice card show going on there at the time at the Machinist Hall. It's a long running St. Louis card show that happens several times a year. So I went there. I went there on Friday night to see a friend. I went down there to see Derek, who is ING Select. He's also Ray Langford collection on IG. He is the owner, in my opinion, of the best single player card collection I have seen in this hobby. His Ray Langford collection is second to none. So I saw Derek, which was great. And then I also asked him, like, who in this room do you think might want this card? And he pointed out a couple of people, and they didn't know what to do with it. They saw it and they were like, wow, what is this? What do you want for this? And I said, I didn't say I don't know, because I know that dealers hate that. I just said, I'll take a few $100s for it. And one just said no, one thought about it and then said no, and a third one said, let me think about this, right? Are you going to be around? I said, yeah, I'm going to be around for a couple hours. I was just walking around. And the only thing that I bought, from the card show that day was a 2024 Slam magazine cover with Caitlin Clark in a Hawkeye uniform. Me being at the University of Iowa, living near the University of Iowa. Okay. I went back to the person who had some interest in it, and they said that they would want it to sell it, and they just wouldn't know how to really market it. And I said, okay, I got it. Cool. No problem. I don't mind holding onto the card. It's a fantastic card. Great card. On the screen now, I'm going to share the full card again. It's just a pretty card with this nice little one-on-one there. Wonderful card. So fast forward about 3 months, 2 months or so, 3 months or so. I had the card in my binder. I had not tried to really sell it. One time I put it up on eBay for just kind of a crazy amount with a buy it now on there to see what kind of offers came through. One came through for $75. One came through for 100 and I think $10. And I was tempted to take that one, but I thought this is just a cool card. I don't mind hanging on to it. That's fine. And if some random person is going to offer me $110 for this card, that means I can probably get it later down the road if I want to. So in mid to late June, a card popped up, which I am working on acquiring. I don't have it yet, so I'm not going to say what it is. But a card popped up, and it's a card that if I had 4 or 5 or 6 months to save up for, it would be like no problem whatsoever. But it's a card that popped up at a really great price. I didn't have much saved up at the time, and it pops up really, really seldom. It rarely ever, if ever, pops up. So I reached out to Mark at Fund Your Cards, and I used him back in January for the very first time. And it was fantastic. He was a complete professional, and the process was professional, and everything worked out fine. And I got the card that I was working toward. And I like to think that I am probably among the lowest requests ever in terms of economic value. And the cards that I've used him twice now. And I know that sometimes he shows cards, or he pops up on Jeremy Lee's Sports Cards Live for Fund Your Cards to talk about cards that he has helped fund for people. And let me just say that when he says that no value is too low in terms of cards to give him to work toward other cards that you want him to acquire, he means that. The card that I'm working toward right now, there was a card at auction on eBay that is probably going to sell for about $1, and he took it. Right? No, I mean, it's great for someone like me. This is a really fun service. I've used him twice. I don't know if there will be a third time, if there will be a need for it, but if there is, I'll go back to Mark. Anyway, this card that I want pops up. It almost never pops up. But I know it's going to go quick if I don't grab it. So I reach out to Mark. I say, hey, Mark, I have this other card that I want. I just put through the request on your website. And I'll put the cards that I'm, going to be used for the collateral or whatever in the mail. He wrote back, great, thanks. And he talked to the seller and negotiated a price between him and just the seller that was off eBay, which was great. So it was even a little bit less, which was wonderful. And one of the cards that I ended up sending to him was this Albert Pujols play ball artwork redemption 1 of 1. And that was one of the ones. And again, some of the cards I sent him were being sold right off, and I was checking the little boxes and getting working my way toward paying off this card. And a handful of the cards that I sent Mark were eventually sent to a consigner. Mark sent to a consigner that he uses to be placed on eBay. And I saw them, and they all look great. But then I looked at this Pujols card, and I realized that I don't think it's labeled right. And I think now you're starting to get the understanding of what it was that was happening here. When I say that I almost had to bid on my own card, I noticed that the card was labeled wrong. So I sent Mark, when I first sent him the cards, I sent them this meticulous spreadsheet of what the cards are, something that's special about them, maybe a pop count or who knows what. On this one, I said, this is what the card is, right? And then the consigner that Mark uses, and I'm not going to say who they are because they're not here to defend themselves, but they labeled it wrong. And in my opinion, they labeled it wrong. And I have it here. They labeled it as, and I'm reading to those of you who are listening, Albert Pujols 2003 Upper Deck Play Ball Baseball USA Gold Stamp 1 of 1 Q0M-461, which I think is how they file their own things. But if you go to Baseball Cardpedia, if you go to Card Ladder, if you go to the PSA Pop Count or SGC, there's no such thing as an Upper Deck Play Ball USA gold stamp. I think they were just trying to be very literal in what they saw. I don't think they knew what they had at all. And instead just kind of made something up. I might be wrong. I could be completely wrong, and I could be the one here who is going to be eating crow. And this could be a real thing. And maybe Baseball Cardpedia just doesn't have all the information, and maybe the consignment company had the right information and I didn't. So I don't know. I want to put that out there that maybe I am wrong about this, but I don't think that I am. So as my other cards that are being consigned for my project, as they start to creep up and start to tick up in terms of bids and watchers, and some of them have 15 watchers, and some have 7, and some have 35, and one of them has like 50 watchers, and they're going up in bid and going up in bid. This Pujols card is just sitting there. And I start thinking, no one's bidding because nobody knows what this card is, and it's labeled wrong. And at this point, I'm not thinking, I want to get this card back. I'm not thinking that really at this point. So I give it a couple days and just see what happens. And it goes from 3 watchers down to 2 watchers. And there are 0 bids on it. So I send Mark a note a couple of days ago. Well, at the time that I'm recording this, a couple of days ago, saying, Mark, I think this card is mislabeled. Do we just want to try to get it back, or basically try to get it fixed? And Mark, as he tends to be, when you reach out to him, is pretty responsive. He gets back to me in like an hour and a half, and goes, I'll reach out to them. He says, I'll let them know. Great, thanks. So apparently he does that. I assume he does that. So a few hours later, that night, nothing is different. It's still labeled there wrong. And I wake up of the morning that the auction is going to end. So it's going to end on a Tuesday night as I record this. And I wake up Tuesday morning and it's still there. All my other cards have gone up a little bit. You can tell they're sort of on this trajectory. A couple are outperforming what I thought. A couple of them are underperforming, but whatever. And then this Pujols card is sitting there, but now it has a bid. This 1/1 third-year Albert Pujols card, this beautiful card, in which I was getting offers of around 75 to 110 for, is now sitting there with 2 total watchers and a $1 bid. And we are now, at this point, we are about 10 hours away from the auction ending. And now, for the first time, this thought enters my mind. Should I bid on my own card and just get it back? Is that a form of shill bidding? One could absolutely come to that conclusion. Yes, that could be a form of shill bidding. Or at the very least, a form of price manipulation. Now, one thing that I could do, assuming this card was going to go really low, is I could just put a serious mega bid on it. And just whatever I ended up winning the card at, I just get the card back. But that's risky. And the reason it's risky isn't for me because I'd have to pay more, because I always pay. No matter what, I would never, ever, ever non-pay. It's risky because there's one other bidder, and that one other bidder might know what this card is, or he might be a Pujols collector, or she might really like the card. And maybe they do a mega bid, and maybe their mega bid is higher than my mega bid. And then I have really screwed that person over, because maybe they could have won the card legit for like $1.50. But in my panic, I make them instead pay, $80 for it. In which case, I would have to then try to track them down to give them their money back, because I then really screwed them over. I would never want to do that. So that's the conflict going back and forth in my head. I started thinking, how much am I going to have to make a bid this card to get it back? Or do I just let it go and say, well, whatever? This is kind of the game you play sometimes. First, I reached out to Mark again. I said, Mark, I think it's time to get the card back. No more trying to fix it. We need to get this card back. It's time, because it is listed wrong, and you can see what's happening to it. he says, I'll reach out to them again. So an hour passes or so, and I check and it has not been changed at all. It's still sitting there. I'm thinking, oh my God. And what starts going through my head now isn't the money thing. What starts going through my head is Rob Gerard, the sports card therapist. For those of you unfamiliar, Rob was a collector and a fantastic podcast host from around 2001 to 2003. He had episodes once or twice a week. And then once or twice a year, he would do a few weeks or a month of roundtables in which he would bring together 3 or 4 collectors to talk about certain topics. And those remain, in my opinion, the best sports card content I have ever consumed were these roundtable discussions. I love these things. Well, in November, I think it was, excuse me, I think it was around November of 23, he appeared to have been caught non-paying items on eBay by another collector who sort of sleuthed it out that Rob had non-paid on some Eli Manning. I don't know if it was Prism Gold or Topps Chrome Gold or something along those lines, or Select Gold or whatever it was. And that same day that the accusation came out, or the day later, I remember I was at the gym and up comes this Instagram reel, and it's Rob trying to explain what happened. And, you know, among the things that that I teach, I teach communication and media, is I teach crisis communication, and I teach image repair, and I teach what not to do in terms of crisis. And the way he handled it, I just start seeing this, oh no, giant red sign flashing through my head, like this was a disaster the way he was doing it. And within a few days or so, or a week, he was gone. He was gone from the hobby. He had deleted his Instagram account. He had deleted all of his podcasts. A couple of them are still on YouTube, including the roundtables, which I will still go back and check out every now and then. But that's what I started thinking about. In the discussions around the hobby that ensued after this, there were discussions of shill bidding, which is not what Rob did. I want to make that very clear. But what I was considering doing with this card, with this Pujols card, might be considered a form of that. But in the discussions, some people would say that the only time it's acceptable to bid on your own card is when there is a listing error, something like exactly what is happening right now, or what's happening with my card. And because you're trying to then protect yourself, ideally what you try to do is you try to get the card delisted. Now, if you're putting the card on eBay yourself, you can just take it down, you can fix it. But if I remember this specifically, somebody brought up the example of if you have the card at a consigner and they have it wrong, and you can't reach out to them, and they won't fix it, then it might be okay to bid on your own card. But you run the risk of the thing that I was scared of, which is you don't want to put anybody else in financial jeopardy. I just wouldn't do that. So ultimately, what I decided is that I was not going to bid. I wasn't going to do it. Rob Gerard, who, as I've talked about before, he is the one that encouraged me and got me into podcasting. He's the one that pushed me into starting the Shallow End. I would not say that we were great friends, but we were definitely friendly. I would definitely consider him a friend. I have not kept in touch with him since he vanished off the face of the hobby planet, other than once to check in on him and to let him know that I was taking my podcast off the Wolfpack Network. And he said he understood and good luck. And that was it. And that was back in 23 as well, I think, or early 24. I can't remember. But I could not risk my reputation, even if I felt like I might have been justified. As I've learned from crisis communication, as I've learned from image repair, once you have to start justifying your actions, you are already starting to go down that slide. And even if 90% of the people believe you, there will be 10% of the people who never forgive you. And while I don't want to go around trying to live my life in fear of what others think of me, there are certain actions that you can take or not take that will influence how people perceive you. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to eat the cost of this card, of the Pool Holes Play Ball Artwork Redemption 1 of 1. I said at the beginning of this podcast that I assumed it would go for as little as 40, as much as 500. And if this card was going to go for as little as 40, then that was just not worth my reputation. If it was going to be like a $10,000 card, yeah, maybe that would have been different. I don't know. But seeing this card go for maybe $1 or $5, which is what I think was going to happen with this card because it was labeled wrong, it just wasn't worth it. The right thing to do was just to kind of let it go, to let it go, and maybe I would never use this consigner myself, right? But you've got to think about what is right, and the worst case scenario here is that if I had mega bid on it and then so had somebody else, I would have really hurt that person. I would have really hurt that person's finances or their potential hobby financial outlook, and that was wrong. And I would never want to do that. And so I said, that's it. I said to myself, I'm going to eat the cost no matter what. And so whatever, I moved on with my day. And then I went and checked eBay later because I check eBay too much. And I was following my cards, the cards that I have through Fund Your Cards and through this consigner, I follow because I like to track to see what they're doing, and I obsess over them. And there was a card that I was following, and my ended cards that I was following that had ended, had ticked up one. And I decided, oh, okay, which card did somebody buy? It was probably some card I had a saved search on, like a Brian Jordan card. And it was the Pool Holes, which means that the consigner finally listened to Mark and took the card down. So decision / crisis averted. Crisis averted. And now I think I would just prefer to have the card sent back to me so I can send it off to a grading company where I can feel better because the card is now officially recognized by some grading company about what that card is. And then maybe somebody who wants to buy it will feel better because they know exactly what it is. But I tell you what, that was a really bad feeling. That's not the reason I got back into collecting cards all those years ago. I got back into collecting cards because I like collecting cards. And I started doing a podcast because I like talking about cards and I like meeting people. And for a very brief time there was a moment where I had to make a decision that could have affected my relationship with the hobby and the people in it. I didn't want to hurt somebody financially. I didn't want people thinking that I was shill bidding in any way. And that's why I decided to sort of just let it ride, if you will. And then I was really relieved. I won't say grateful because that's something they were supposed to do, is take the card down. But I was really relieved they took the card down because now I'd never have to decide whether or not to jump over the edge of the cliff or not. I can just turn back around and walk away from the edge of the cliff. And I think what I'm taking away most from this is I'm thinking back to late 2023 and early 24 when folks were having this discussion publicly about whether it is ever okay to bid on your own cards. And I think I've moved closer in this discussion toward it never being okay. But I think that sort of the asterisk to that is depends how much financially you have put in to that card, because that could really affect people's ability to pay bills or to buy other cards, right? Or to live or pay their mortgage or their rent or whatever. And the reason that I feel more conservative about this and more militant about this this debate than I did in 23 and 24, And as I was listening to the debate back then, I thought, oh, I could kind of see it both ways. The reason I feel more militant about it now, about why it's almost never okay, is because how it could affect somebody else who might be bidding if they were to get caught up in this hurricane of someone trying to win their card back. Because if I had mega bid that card and won it, the Pujols, I would have just paid for it. And I would not have set a new comp for it, because it's like this one of one random parallel that has only popped up 5 times on any card over the last 22 years. So I'm not really messing with comp. I'm not really messing with anybody else. But I really would have been messing with this other bidder had they won the card and had I jacked up the price on them. And so because of that, to reignite this whole shill bidding type of debate, to me, this is just my opinion, but to me, the only time it is ever okay for someone to bid on their own card is when someone else, such as a consigner, has put you in the spot to really significantly and perhaps irreparably damage you financially. Now, there will be caveats to that, and we can have that discussion later if you want to have it. But I tell you, man, I felt icky. I could feel like a queasiness in my stomach, like, I want to bid on this card. I cannot let this card go for like $1.50. I don't care if I did pay just 61 cents for it. This is a card that I've already been offered, $110 for. And maybe, I'm going to the National here in a few weeks, and maybe I can get $50 for it, or 75, or 5 billion. I don't know. But cards, sports cards, they do funny things to us. Sports cards play funny games on us. They trick us. They misplace priorities. They make us think that they're important when they're not. I mean, sports cards really are not important. They're a hobby, like golf. Golf doesn't matter. Sports cards don't matter in the long run, right? Any hobby, takes a back seat to who we are, who we want to be, and the people most close to us, around us. So yeah, so that's it. That's it for this episode of The Shallow End. I thought this would be an instructive conversation to have, to kind of bring back to the forefront a little bit. And I'm glad that it worked out the way it did. I was ready and willing to take the hit on it, but that was a far greater outcome than making somebody else's hobby experience more expensive or worse than it needed to be. Because this is a space where we're not lone operators here, right? What we do affects other people. What that consigner almost did by not changing it or taking it down fast enough led to a decision that I had to make, that if I had made the wrong one would have hurt somebody else. And who knows how this it's like paying it forward, but paying it forward with a backhanded slap. At some point you've got to be the one who doesn't slap back. And I was going to do that, but hey, all's well that ends well, right? Hopefully I get my card back, and it's a beautiful card. And if it stays with me, it stays with me. And if it goes to somebody else, it will go to somebody else under the proper pretense. So thank you for listening to The Shallow End. I appreciate it so much. And I'll talk with you again next time, whenever that may be.